people are still signing in a little later.
Third session, right? I know you're going to do an introduction. Okay.
Yes. This is the third in a 6-week series. And for those of you, if this is your first time, each session lasts approximately 30 minutes and includes concepts from Bryan's very helpful book that I love and have read, #Chill, Turn Off Your Job and Turn On Your Life, followed by what Bryan calls simple, short MicroChiller meditations that will help us relax and restore during this time of great uncertainty. So now I'd like to introduce Bryan. Bryan is a psychotherapist who has built his career on the themes of resilience, work-life balance, and well-being. His research has been featured on numerous national programs. He also hosted the PBS documentary, Overdoing It, How to Slow Down and Take Care of Yourself. He's a contributor to Forbes magazine and Psychology Today. So I'm gonna turn things over to you, Bryan.
Well, good afternoon to everybody. It's great to be back again. One of the things in each session I've been doing is talking about a MicroChiller that is 5 minutes or less, is portable, free, obviously, and something you can do pretty much anywhere. And the one that I'm going to talk to you about today is called resourcing. And then after the meditation, next thing I'd like to do is get back to one of the questions last week was, what do I do at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm worrying about my bookstore and how am I going to make ends meet and so forth. I started that, but there's so much more I want to say. And resourcing is one of the things you can do. The main thing is, and in fact, I caught myself awake it was 2 or 3 this morning. It was a thunderstorm. I was telling Linda Marie, my dog's terrified of lightning and thunder and jumped into bed with me. And then I lay there thinking about not the coronavirus, but more about what am I going to say to you guys this afternoon? So, and then I used my techniques, and this is one of the techniques that I often use. So resourcing can be an internal thing or an external thing. There are 2 classifications. An example of an inner resource would be if you think of how creative you are, or some tall coming, or some talent you have that you can really embrace and without modesty. But any trait that you embody that you really appreciate and are proud of. An external resource is a memory. It can be a pet. It can be your spouse, when your kids were born, if you have kids. It could be a vacation somewhere. It could be a spiritual leader. And so what we do with the resource, we bring it up. Now, I'm going to ask you in a minute to think of a resource, and I'll tell you, I have 2 that I use. One is my golden doodle, Hudson. We will often take naps in the afternoon, and he likes for me to rub his belly, and then I start falling asleep, and then he elbows me to wake me up so I can keep rubbing his belly. And that just fills me with joy because I love him so much. That's one. And you notice I just embedded that, I gave it a little detail. So whatever your resource is, I want you to think of a specific time when you were doing this, if it's an external resource, or a specific time when you remember thinking about how smart you are or how good you did on a project or a talk maybe you gave to colleagues. The other resource I use, and this is a common one, I want you to use whatever you want. It doesn't have to be what I use, but this is a place at the beach that we go just about every year. And it's a specific time there in the morning when everybody's still asleep. We usually have a bunch of different families. And I'm sitting on the screened-in porch. I'm drinking my coffee. It's really quiet. I'm looking out at the ocean, and the shrimp boats are going by, and the sun is like a big red ball coming up over the ocean. When I bring that up, and you can see how detailed I've made it, I feel a sense of calm and peace. And so what resourcing does, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So I'd like for each one of you right now to think, first of all, about what your resource is. And then I may ask a few of you to tell me what it is, and there's one other step to it. Nikki, what about you?
Well, I was thinking mostly about walking in barefoot in my garden that
Okay.
I have.
Yeah.
Specifically barefoot, because I love the feel of it on the bottom of my feet. I love the feel of the garden paths.
What does that feel like?
Oh, it's my sort of decompress. It just sort of, everything sort of calms down. It's not quiet. There's a lot of neighborhood noise and everything, but it's, you know, quiet right where I am. You know, so it's still right where I am.
When was the last time you did that?
This morning. I actually have to go out there several times a day at this point. So,
When you go out and walk in the garden, what do you do?
well, mostly I just look and see what's new, what's different. Sometimes I weed, but mostly it's just seeing what's come up, or what is coming up this time of year. Something, there's always something new that I didn't notice, like, you know, earlier, that sort of surprises me.
So this morning, what did you notice?
This morning I noticed that my butterfly weed is finally coming up, and I thought I'd lost it all from last year, but there it was, and it was actually fairly well along, and I somehow had missed it for the last couple days, even though I thought I was looking oh so carefully for it. You know, so it just sort of shut up. So
what do you notice right now on the inside?
Oh, you know, it makes me happy. The garden makes me very happy.
How do you know? What tells you that you're happy?
Well, I'm smiling, you know.
You're smiling?
Yeah.
What do you notice in your body?
Just, it's a little, I don't feel all, you know, tense. I feel looser.
Feel looser,
Yeah.
right?
I walk around a lot like this, you know, like.
Yeah.
Muscles
are a little tighter.
But not in the garden, so.
And you're not in the garden right now, but when you pull that image up and you extend it like you just did, it will have a similar effect. And
Yeah,
that's
it has the same effect. It just,
yeah.
Okay,
good. It helps to use one person's example, but all of you who have a resource, the one thing you want to do is extend it. And what that means is just see the detail, and it helps to remember a specific time when you were in that place, or when you were with that spiritual leader, or you were with your pet, or with your child, or whatever. One more person, just quickly. This is something you can do at 3 in the morning, by the way. It will help your body relax and calm you down. Anybody else?
I think Mary's going to volunteer.
Mary.
There we go. Hi there. Thank you. I too, Nikki, it's about grounding in my feet, and specifically it's put one foot forward, the other follows. And I have a lot of gifts or resources, but they're not as easy as just going right back down to my feet and sensing where they are right now. But I regularly get out and meditate. And
I like that. Meditate.
so, yeah. So that's my resource.
That's great.
And in the middle of the night, I like that you asked that question. Is that I just go to my feet, even though I'm slumbering and I'm in bed, I'm not sleeping, or I'm restless. I go back to my feet and bring it right back into that. I've not extended it. I mean, I know that that's one way I can bring the rest of my presence back into, okay, so I might not be sleeping, but there, I feel my feet.
That's great. When was the last time you did that, Mary?
I did it in a communication yesterday with my husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were talking on the phone or
I was talking, yeah, he's hard of hearing, and I was talking around 2 corners and he couldn't hear me.
I see.
And he keeps saying, unless you have sight of me, don't keep talking. So when he did that, I went to my feet rather than saying, I know. I just said, I'm going to remember that this time.
Okay. And what do you remember feeling inside when you went to your feet?
My eyes lifted to his eyes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Okay.
And I was taller, which those are the two things I remembered. But I think I got out of my head and back into what he was asking for, which was visual connection.
That's right. And that's what all these microchillers do. They take us out of our head, and that's where worry, rumination, fear, and anxiety reside. And when we can go into the body, I love that. What did you call it? Peta meditation? Meditate. That's really cool. It's great. You remember last week I talked about grounding, and we were sitting in chairs. But Mary's bringing up a good point, and I wanted to bring that up today because lying in bed, you can also at 3 in the morning ground, and the way you would do that is the bottom of your feet, then your bottom, and then the back of your head. If let's say you're lying on your back, but you can start with your feet and just feel the support of the bed underneath your heels, and kind of focus there for a minute. And then move up and feel the support of the bed underneath your legs, and then feel the support under your bottom, and then your back, and then your head. I'm running through it a little quicker than you would do it because you want to focus in each place, and you'll feel a total relaxation as a result of that. I had a colleague once a woman who, she was very creative and inventive, and she said one of the things that helps her get to sleep at 3 in the morning is to take an ugly woman and give her a makeover. And I thought that was really clever, and she would give her makeup, and she would give her jewelry and a new hairdo and clothes, and she said before she even finished, she was gone. She was out like a light. So there are a lot of things you can do. The main thing is focus. You'll notice in all these tools, focus is key, and it almost doesn't even matter what you focus on, as long as you have some object of focus. I use my breath. That's what I did last night. Is I focus on the intake of my breath, and then on the outtake, and then before I know it, I'm gone. And I'm going to talk about that in another session, how we use our breath, but. So we've got grounding, we've got resourcing. Another really, really important microchiller is gratitude. And I'm not the first to come up with this, but there is a lot of research on this now coming out of the neurobiologists are studying it. And when you think of just 3 things that you're grateful for, and take maybe 3 minutes and just focus on those things. It could be a pet, could be a person, could be something special in your life or a time in your life. The gratitude, what we know from the research is people who practice gratitude regularly are 25% more happy than people who don't, number one. The other thing is there's research showing that it actually helps you sleep. Because what it's doing, it's moving you from the rumination to a different place. You'll notice all these tools, the microchillers, they go from, remember I talked about the zoom lens that we're wired to do to focus on the threat or the worry. And it brings you and balances out the way you're thinking about your life. Nature also does this. And I got an email today from Robin Cape, who's a friend of mine here in Asheville. And she said lately she's been going to Looking Glass Overlook, which is one of her favorite places to go. And she said, when I go there, it reminds me that life is bigger than my little situation. And we don't do that at 3 in the morning, but it's a way to regulate our worry and our fear. And remember this, the more you practice these little short microchillers, over time, it widens your resilience zone. So it's not just that one-shot deal, you're building something. Actually, scientists call it broaden and build. And what that means is, if you do these microchillers over time, you will start to notice you're not ruminating as much. You will notice that you're not worrying as much. You'll notice that you don't react, that there's something different about I call it acting or responding instead of just reacting from your lizard brain. So it gives your parasympathetic nervous system, which is what we call the rest and digest response, equal say to your sympathetic, which is the rumination and the worry. So everything we're talking about is bringing balance to how you think, whether it's a to-be list to offset your to-do list, tall comings to offset shortcomings. Just about anything we're talking about is bringing positivity to negativity. There's an old saying that an optimist wakes up in the morning and throws the window open and says, "Good morning, God." And a pessimist wakes up and throws the window open and says, "Good God, morning." So it's the same words, it's just a different way in how we think about what's happening. And that shifts everything, our perspective. And then the body goes along with that. The body calms down. So as Linda Marie said, and I think all of you know, she and I live in the same city in Asheville, North Carolina. And I'm lucky enough to have a view of the mountains. And one of the things I've been doing lately, it's another MicroChiller, is when I look at the mountains, not only the beauty, the shape, the size, the colors. I love in the wintertime when the orange sunsets and the mountains are black in the foreground. But the other thing I notice is these mountains have been here for millions of years and will be here long after I'm gone. And when I contemplate that, and I just call this contemplation of nature, and you can do this with anything. It doesn't have to be mountains. It can be the ocean. It can be flowers. Nikki, this is something you could do in your garden. So any aspect of nature. And what happens is I feel this incredible euphoria and a descending calm that comes over me. And of course, the research shows that that's exactly what happens. There's tons of research on this now, that even watching a National Geographic special or documentary on TV will do that for you. So you can do it right from your sofa. If for some reason you can't get outside, will actually decrease your stress, will lower your anxiety, and this will carry over into bedtime. One of the things I suggest is don't wait and get in bed, and then if you start ruminating, then try to do this. I mean, if you do it beforehand, if you're proactive, you're going to have a better result. If you do take 3 to 5 minutes and kind of get your body in a calm state before you even get in bed. And then if it comes back, you can do it again at 3 in the morning. I want to make sure we have time for, okay. I was reading what Nikki was saying to everybody. Good. You all know about what ifs. What ifs are ways in which we make up a story about what's going to happen. And this is part of what our lizard brain does. You know, what if my business goes down the drain? What if I can't get the money to get things going again? What if I lose my house? What if I can't make enough money to pay my bills? What if? And I will tell you that what we really know in psychology is the brain is a very creative organ, and it will make up incredible catastrophic stories. And again, it's the lizard brain that takes over, and it's myopic, and it clouds out the big picture. But it wants you to be ready. It doesn't want you just to lay back and not give a crap about what's happening. But in doing that, it overestimates threats. This is a scientific fact. That's why scientists call it a negativity bias. So one of the things that you want to be able to do is when you're thinking about what if this happens or what if that happens, is here again, you can bring balance to that and say, what if I come back stronger than ever? What if I have plenty of money to pay the bills? You can turn or flip the situation around and talk about the positive what ifs, because the truth is if we're objective and we take a bird's eye view, just because we think what if doesn't mean it's going to be horrible. We just don't know. And the not knowing is what causes our mind to go into the negative, to prepare us for the worst case scenario, which, by the way, almost never happens. And I've been doing therapy for a long, long time, reading this research. I practice this. And in all the times that I've had these what ifs, I can't think of one time that it actually came true. So this is not about putting your head in the sand and pretending everything's great. It's just really about bringing balance so that you can, if the worst case scenario does happen, it helps you see possibilities. The lizard brain doesn't help with possibilities. It just wants you to react, fight, flight, freeze, protect yourself. The wide angle lens helps you see possibilities, positivity, and solutions to things. Okay, I'd like to do another MicroChiller, and Linda Marie's done this one before, I think in Savannah or wherever we were in Florida, maybe Florida at SEBA.
Florida, yeah.
Was it Florida? Yeah. So I'd like you to think of something that has disappointed you or something that's been weighing on your mind, but not the pandemic, because this is the first time you've done this. So I want you to work with something workable, not the big kahuna. So it could be something like what Mary was talking about, remembering to make sure that, her husband can hear her when they're communicating. Or it could be me when my spouse is coming down on me for not taking my gloves and my mask off in the right order. Because I don't think that way, and so I'm having to learn. But it can be frustrating. So it's something that is disappointing or something that is frustrating, but not the big thing. Okay. Now, once you have it, then we're going to do something called the butterfly hug. And the way that works is you cross your arms. And this is the butterfly. You're hugging yourself. You can do it either way. I like this better, I think. And while you're doing this, I want you to turn to the right and look at something to your right. It could be anything that maybe you hadn't noticed in a while, and just see it as vividly as you can in your mind. The color, the shape, what you think the texture is. Just see it in your mind's eye as vividly as you can. Now turn to your left, do the same thing. On your left, notice something that maybe you hadn't focused on. And as you focus, just pay attention to the shape of whatever it is, the colors. If there's a sound, what sound is it making? Just really notice. Now come back to the center and then to the right one more time and find something different that you focus on. Again, seeing it as vividly as you can. See all the details of whatever that is. And then one last time back to your left. Keep your butterfly flapping. And notice something different on your left that you haven't noticed in a while. In detail. And then back to the center. And what do you notice? Anybody?
The emotional impact of what I was originally worried about is softened.
Okay.
It's diminished.
The softening of what you originally thought about. How do you know that? What tells you that inside?
My body relaxed through the exercise.
Uh-huh.
And I also didn't know if this was like that stimulating both sides of the brain kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it does.
We have EMDR a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. In fact, a lot of people that do EMDR use that.
Mhm.
Somebody said, calmer, my mind didn't feel so something.
Tight.
Tired?
Tight.
Tight. Good, good. Yeah, okay. Your neck felt more relaxed, Kit said. Cool. Okay. So once you do it, then you want to make sure you pay attention, you go inside and say, what do I notice now in my body? What sensation? Because what that does, in neurology, we say it sends it to the hard drive. In other words, it tells your brain, what we're doing with all these microchillers is training your brain that it doesn't have to always, the needle doesn't have to always go to the negative. And after a while, that's why you start to notice you're not worrying as much, because you're really giving your brain a workout. It's like when I go work with my personal trainer, the first week or two, even the first month, I didn't have the muscles I have now. But I mean, I can do a lot of things a lot of people my age can't do, like lifting and so forth. That's because it took me time to get there. The brain is an organ the same way. It needs a workout. And what we're doing is working it out and teaching it that it can go over here. It doesn't have to always go over here to the negative. One other thing about 3 o'clock in the morning and you're worrying is a little acronym I call WAIT. Because a lot of times when I'm ruminating, I don't even know it. You're so in it, in the thought stream, you're not even aware of it. And once you are become aware, the wait is, why am I thinking? Why am I thinking? And then that will trigger you to go into one of these micro chillers right away. It's just a way, it's a cue, because otherwise you can lie there for a half hour and not even realize you've been ruminating, because we're so in the water, we don't see the water we're swimming in sometimes. For homework, I'd like for you to find something in nature that you can focus on, and just contemplate it for 2 or 3 minutes. And it reminds me of that old, John Muir had a quote that he said, I'm in the mountains, and I can't say it as eloquently as he did. And he describes how beautiful it is. And then he says, I'm in the mountains and the mountains are in me. And you can say that about a flower. We have an amaryllis growing in our kitchen that's just stunning. I took a picture of it today, and I started, after I contemplated a little bit, I started feeling like, and the flower is in me. And that's when you start to feel that release and the comfort. And again, what you're doing is building muscle. You're building muscle memory that's going to help you with your resilience to confront anything life brings you, no matter how dire the circumstances. Any questions?
You had mentioned this one concept about broadening the perspective.
Yes.
Could you just recite that? I think I'd like to look up a little bit more into that. I didn't remember the whole technique.
Okay, sure. Scientists call it broaden and build. So I'll give you, Mr. Rogers used to do this all the time. He was great. I remember when Reagan was whatever the guy's name, tried to assassinate him, Mr. Rogers kept telling kids, look at the people who are helping. Pay attention to the helpers. And that is relevant now. Instead of focusing on all the people that are dying and that are getting sick, look at all the helpers. And that's another way of balancing out our thinking or reframing. So I don't know, Mary, if you were here when I talked about the zoom lens and the wide angle lens.
Yeah.
But broaden and build is when I put on my wide angle lens, and instead of focusing on the negative, I put it in the context of the big picture. And then that helps me see, oh, well, we could do this, we could do that, or These are the strategies I can use to get through this pandemic. And it unleashes your creativity. It unleashes options that you can't really see when you're in the Zoom lens because there's too much fear, and the fear blocks out it throws your prefrontal cortex offline, so you can't see the possibilities. It's supposed to do that because if your house is on fire right now, you want to get the heck out. You don't want to be thinking about possibilities. You want to just move. But when there's something looming that may not be as dangerous as it really is, we want to be able to put on that wide angle lens and look at the big picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you do, again, when you practice the broaden and build, over time, you start to automatically see the big picture. Again, it's muscle memory. You're training or disciplining your mind to go there instead of there.
Well, it
Thank
looks
you.
like we've reached the end of our time, Bryan. Thank you so much for this half hour. It was really wonderful.
You're so welcome.
And if any of you have questions for Bryan for future sessions, just email me, lindamarie@cbaweb.com, and I'll send them on to Bryan, or any issues that you might want him to kind of address in a therapeutic way. So thank you so much. This is the official end of the webinar. Hope to see you next week.
Good night. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.